Daniel Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 3 matchup between the Kansas State Wildcats and the Missouri Tigers. Two teams with some of the highest upside in the country this season. Kansas State's a team that's kind of overshadowed by Texas in the Big 12 right now, but this is a team not to sleep on. I think Kansas State's got the experience and the talent. This team is built to win this season, and I could definitely see them in the running for the college football playoff. But they're taking on Missouri in Week 3. Missouri's a team that I think has got a lot of potential, very much an experienced team this season, and last season finished out the season pretty strong. Mizzou is definitely a team to keep an eye on, and with them being at home Week 3, this is definitely one of the bigger matchups coming up here this weekend. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. Let's get started with your team trends. Kansas State took care of Troy, no problem last week, 42-13, 2-0 start to this season. Kansas State is back once again this year. I mean, this is a team that I could definitely see winning the Big 12 again. I mean, there's a chance that this team goes as far as making the college football playoff as well. They've really been impressive so far the last couple of weeks. But Missouri on the other side, they beat Middle Tennessee 23-19. Definitely a team that you'd expect out of a Power 5 SEC team to you'd expect to beat them by more, but in the end, a win's a win, and this is a 2-0 football team heading into this matchup. But I will say this, though, too. Missouri heading into the season, I mean, this is a team that's still in the SEC, which is a brutal conference. It's really tough to stand out in the SEC, especially if you're not a big-name team like Alabama or Georgia or even like a Tennessee. But Missouri's got the talent to be a dark horse in the conference this season, and it really starts here in this matchup, taking on a K-State team that's hot right now. I mean, the schedule really doesn't get much easier for Mizzou, so if this team wants to make a run this season, it really starts in this matchup here. Games be on Saturday, September 16th in Columbia. That's another advantage, that Missouri is the home team for this one. It is a morning kickoff, 11 a.m. Central. Spread's going Kansas State here by 5, so Wildcats are still favored, but not by a lot. That is something to keep in mind. Over-under is 46.5. FPI is going with Kansas State as well, 68% series history. Obviously, these two teams being former rivals in the Big 12. Missouri leads at 60-33, so a very long history between these two teams. Last game being last season, where Kansas State was dominant, beating Missouri 40-12 in that one. So that is something to keep in mind, though, as well. I mean, that doesn't mean Missouri can't win this matchup. It's just that K-State took care of Mizzou no problem last year. Stat comparison, Kansas State 13th in points per game so far this season, 18th in points allowed. I mean, this is a really well-rounded team in Kansas State. I mean, last season they really came on the radar, had an outstanding season. And even this year, the experience that this team has, this is a team that lost some talent from last year, but they're still very experienced this season. 50th in passers again, 56th in rush yards, and defensively so far really strong against the rush, 18th in the country in rush defense so far. And that's for Mizzou. Really middle of the road team statistically so far, 80th in points per game, 41st in points allowed. They are 81st in passers a game, 90th in rush yards. And then for defense, most notably, they are 19th in rush defense. So both teams pretty strong rush defenses. And I mean, obviously for Missouri, having Cody Schrader, a standout running back, over 200 yards so far this season. And Brady Cook, not a bad start for him. Will Howard, obviously a big standout for K-State. He's already got 550 right around their yards on the season for passing, 5 touchdowns, has thrown a couple of picks, but overall a really strong passer. So for Missouri, got to be ready to defend the pass here, because Kansas State, that's what this team is very much going to be known for this season. They've got some strong rushers as well. Obviously, Deuce Vaughn is gone, so a little bit inexperienced in the backfield this season, but Will Howard, as strong of a passer as he is, I'd be stunned if Kansas State didn't lean on him a lot this season. Your recent matchups, K-State, they beat Troy 42-13 in Week 2, beat Southeast Missouri State 45-0. So 2 dominant wins so far for K-State. And by the way, I mean, Troy was not a bad team last season. I mean, yeah, Troy is maybe it's a different team this season, not quite as good, but Troy is still a team that was a contender last year in their conference. So I mean, that game should not be taken lightly. That was a dominant win over a halfway decent team there in Troy. And for Missouri, obviously beating South Dakota, FCS opponent, and then beating Middle Tennessee in a close, kind of an ugly matchup. I mean, a win's a win, but that is something to keep in mind. K-State has been very sharp so far this season. Your key points, K-State 2-0. This team remains dominant, a Big 12 favorite. But Texas, the way that they just beat Alabama, I mean, Texas is probably your Big 12 favorite as of right now. You got Kansas State, and I'd probably argue Oklahoma's in there as well. Your top is probably Texas now, then K-State and Oklahoma not far behind. But K-State, I would give them the edge on Oklahoma. I do think the Wildcats are talented enough to win the conference. And honestly, I mean, the way it looks right now, your Big 12 championship is probably going to be K-State and Texas unless something goes totally way off as expected. And honestly, the winner of that matchup could easily end up in the college football playoff. But the thing is about K-State, you got to focus on this matchup. This is one not to sleep on. I said this in the offseason. I actually picked Missouri to win this matchup in the offseason for my predictions for K-State and Missouri because I saw this as definitely a big-time trap game, and Missouri's a good enough team to beat K-State. So this is not one to overlook here if you're the Wildcats. This is one where I wouldn't be surprised if on Sunday we're looking back at a disappointing loss for K-State. So I want to definitely still, even though K-State is I'd say the more talented team for sure, this is one of those games you just don't want to sleep on. But for Mizzou, this is an SEC sleeper that's got experience. They got upside. And honestly, for Missouri, this is a team that could easily be 5-0 heading into their LSU matchup in October with a win here. I mean, the schedule sets up perfectly for that. So, we could be seeing a Missouri team ranked in the top 15 in a few weeks. Maybe even higher than that if they can take down the Wildcats here. They got home field advantage, a massive opportunity for the Tigers to really put themselves on the map. And so with that, let's get to the prediction here for K-State and Mizzou coming up here in week 3. Definitely one of the matchups to keep an eye on. And in the end, I'm going to be going with a different prediction than what I said in the offseason. I'm going to be taking K-State here. The way this team has been sharp so far this season, I do have more confidence in the Wildcats here. But once again, this has got all of the keys of being a potential trap game for K-State. So, it's definitely one that can go either way. I wouldn't be surprised if Missouri won this one. They're talented enough to do it, but also based on considering how K-State took care of Mizzou no problem last year, and the way that K-State has got experience and they're still very talented, I do think the Wildcats get it done in this one, but it's going to be close and it easily could go either way. This is going to be almost a 50-50 matchup for me. I am going to be taking the over. I'm pretty confident in that. Mizzou does have a pretty strong defense, but the offense of K-State should put up enough points, especially if they win to take or for the over to hit. So I've got that, and I do have Missouri covering the spread. It's currently at 5.5 towards K-State, so I do have Mizzou keeping it pretty close, but I'm going to be taking Kansas State in the end. I do think the Wildcats are very much built to win right now. Missouri is in a way as well, even though it's much, much harder to stand out in the SEC if you're Mizzou. But Kansas State, give me them in this matchup. They win at 20-24. That's going to wrap it up for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup. Appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.